communications thing, that's a huge thing.
So are you going to continue with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I just think I've already invested a lot of time, so yeah. See it to its end. Or at least for another year anyway. Yeah.
I'm trying to get some clarification on my role in the rest of the law office. It's just been one thing after another, but I would like to get back to that.
Right? Yeah. We need to. Yeah. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, I've got to adjust it. I'm so short. I'm sure this will be adjusted at a higher level for anyone but me. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for colleagues joining us from Western Canada. Thanks for taking your seats. We'd like to get started on time, especially for those joining us via webcast. My name is Christine Dawson, and I'm your incoming CEWIL president, and I'd like to welcome you to Conestoga College for our annual AGM and PD event. We're going to begin with the AGM, take a brief bio break at 1:30 Eastern, and set up for our PD event, which will begin at 2 p.m., which is a panel discussion where there's a will, there's more ways. So a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get started. If you haven't found them already, washrooms are located down the hallway to your right, and refreshments for the break will be in the same location as lunch. And if you haven't had an opportunity, and I've noticed there isn't a pull-up banner, so you may not have realized that they were there, but please do stop by the MyTax booth. So the MyTax booth is located right next to the registration table out in the main atrium area, and they'd love to talk to you about funding opportunities available to support will research initiatives and experiences for students. And it's very fitting to our PD panel today. Wi-Fi information and the link to the voting platform is on the back of your name tags. If you have EduRoam, you should be logged in easily. Otherwise, the information is provided for you. And for those of you joining us via, please use the live stream chat. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please let us know through the chat. We have someone monitoring that for the entire AGM and PD event. And we'll do our best to resolve those issues as quickly as possible. And thank you to your patience if there are any issues with technology in terms of running a national event. So to start off today's events, I'd like to introduce Mike Dinning, Vice President, Student Affairs at Conestoga College, to say a few words of welcome on behalf of the college.
I was just kidding before this event that one time when I was supposed to speak at a dinner, the speaker or the MC got up and introduced me, and they were very kind in their introductions, but then said that as soon as I was done that the bar would reopen. So I've just noticed I've gone to a whole new standard. Just prior to my speaking, we now get how to find the washrooms in the place. So I don't know if I'm moving up or what. There are two things I've been supplied to come here and speak with. One is a speech that Christine wrote me that I'll use a bit of. She's very efficient. The second is a promotional thing for the Frederick Art Walk in Waterloo region, that if you happen to be around on November 10th and go to Frederick Street, there's all kinds of things you could do there. So I feel committed to put the plug in. We're very pleased to host the CEWIL annual general meeting and PD event at Conestoga College and on our Cambridge campus. We do two of our main campuses, which are the Doon campus across the street and then the Cambridge campus here. I think we're the only college with the 401 as the main street that goes in. But we also have a number of other campuses, and we just opened up a brand new building on our Waterloo campus last week, a 150,000 square foot new building. And so things are good at Conestoga College. This is the home to our School of Engineering and Information Technology and some programs from the School of Trades and Apprenticeship, and also to the Institute for Food Processing that you will see here. I understand that a number of you participated in a tour of our facility here, which is 260,000 square feet. It was open, I think, about 5 years ago as a project, which also included on our Doon campus a significant addition to our health area. And I'm sure you're impressed with the many opportunities our students have to apply their learning as demonstrated on this campus. I asked Christine earlier as to, is the proof in the pudding, our support of work-integrated learning, co-op, the whole range of opportunities. And right now, we're now up to about 16,000 full-time post-secondary students, and about 12,000 of our students are now actively participating in the wide range of work-integrated learning that is available. So I hope we are living up to our commitment to create career-ready graduates at this institution. Conestoga has also spent a lot of hard work and a lot of time seeking accreditation for over half of our programs, our co-op programs that are going in, and one of the, I hope, first colleges that moved in that direction to get accreditation for our co-op programs. One of the things that we don't do well at times, and I think a lot of institutions are similar to this, is look at the type of impact we have in our communities and how the work we do impacts our communities. And one of the things that happened last year as part of the 50th anniversary of colleges in Ontario, we had a redo of an economic impact survey at Conestoga College. And it turns out that over 3,200 businesses in Waterloo region were started and created by Conestoga graduates. Our economic impact in the community was estimated at $2.4 billion a year. I think that speaks to our commitment to our graduates, to our community, to the place that colleges have, and our commitment to get students out and get them contributing in our community. I think more of us need to do these type of surveys to make people aware. I hear often, you know, well, what's Conestoga College and what does Conestoga College do? 50% of all workers in Waterloo region have taken at least one course at Conestoga College. These are the types of things that we have to put forward and promote and let people know the importance of the experiential learning, the work-integrated learning, its placements, the co-op opportunities that students need, and the commitment that is made and the job that you do in driving our economy on an ongoing basis. These are very practical and real contributions that all of you make at your institutions, and I think we need to do a better job of bragging, if I could use the term, about the types of things we do and the types of impacts that we have. I'll go to my last page. I skipped 2/3 of the first part. Oh. I wish you good luck in your meetings. I wish that this goes well. We are really, really thrilled to have you here at Conestoga College. We hope you get the opportunity to have a little bit of a look around our region for those that aren't from here. And you will see it's a dynamic region. It's got a dynamic economy, and it needs more and more highly skilled trades and highly skilled employees. One of the things, and I got to go back, I left off, we also have over 3,000 apprentices at Conestoga College. We like to think we're either the biggest or second biggest supplier of apprenticeship training in the province. Generally, Mohawk argues with us about that, but I'll take liberties. I've got the microphone. We're number one on this whole thing. So good luck for today, parts of tomorrow. Thank you for coming to Conestoga College, and we are really pleased to have you here, and hopefully you get a lot out of this. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I'd now like to welcome CEWIL President Claudia Stirling to talk about our voting platform and to begin our AGM.
Oh, look, I have to raise the mic. Not too much, though. Okay, just let me get sorted here. Get the glasses on. You guys ready? All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, either in person or virtually from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. Hey, peeps. And thank you to Mike, who's already left the room, Christine and Conestoga so much. Thank you so much for hosting us today. Very much appreciated. So I'd like to begin by introducing you to your current board of directors. because I do feel they've been working extremely hard and should be recognized. So President-elect Christine, of course. Past President Ann Fannin, give a little wave, Ann. Secretary Scott Daniels at the end there. Our Alberta and Northwest Territories Regional Rep, Stacey Gaudette-Sharp. She's in Lethbridge right now. Wave to Stacey. Stacey, wave back. Atlantic Regional Rep is Doug Gallant. He's back home. Wave to the crowd, Doug. Everybody, wave to Doug. Our BC and Yukon Rep, Heather Workman, Langara College. She's right here. Manitoba and Nunavut Rep, Crystal Paskaruk. Where are you, Crystal? There you are. Ontario Regional Rep, Ross Johnson. Right there. Our Quebec Regional Rep is Charlene Marion. She's also at home. Everyone wave to Charlene. Okay, good. Saskatchewan Rep, Trudy Osborne. There she is. Director at Large Universities, Nora McRae. Director at Large Colleges, Elaine Fenner, who's in Italy. Okay, she's not even watching. Director at Large WIL University, Kara Krezek. There she is. Director at Large WIL Colleges, Matthew Rempel. Our employer reps, Patrick Gauthier from the PSC, sorry, my apologies, and Brian Convery from RBC. Our treasurer, Aldo Morabito from Kiewit. And there are a number of individuals that are leaving our board today. So I wanted to recognize them and to say thank you so much for all of your hard work and your dedication. I know that some of you are continuing on with committees and that sort of thing. So I wanted to say thank you to Ann Fannin, Crystal Paskaruk, Ross Johnson, and Charlene Marion. Thank you. We could not, yes. We could not do the work that we do as a national association without our many, many volunteers, not only on the board, but also those that are volunteering with one of our many committees. I counted them up. We have close to 100 volunteers on all of our committees and the board, and many of whom are serving on multiple committees. So thank you to all of those for all of their hard work. Next page. All right. To begin, I want to quickly go over the instructions on how to vote. The website is up there. We're using Poll Everywhere. The system is similar to the platform for the 2017 AGM, where you'll vote through an electronic device that's connected to the internet. The platform can be reached by visiting Poll Ev. You can see it up there. The website is on the screen. All right. I should maybe read this before. It's on the screen. It's right there. So once you've connected to the platform, when it first opens up, you have to enter your full name so we can track who has voted and how many times they voted. So if you don't include your name, your vote will be invalid. If a member assigned their proxy to you, and I know that there's at least 21 proxies for some, oh boy, you will have been notified of that at the registration desk. So that's how many times you will vote, you plus your proxies. If you have any questions about the proxies, please see Jenny. Jenny, wave to the crowd. Everyone knows Jenny. When each motion is activated to vote, you will click on either in favor, opposed, or abstain. If you vote too many times, there's an option to clear your last response at the bottom. If you have any questions, see Jenny. She's right there. Now, on to our first order of business. Okay. And that is approval of our parliamentarian. So we have a motion to approve Muriel Klemetsky to serve as the parliamentarian for our AGM today. Can I have a second? Bruce. And if you could also say your name, because while I know many of you, I don't know all of you, so.
Bruce Wilson, Redeemer University.
Thank you, Bruce. Any discussion from the floor? None? Okay, everyone. It's our first official vote. We're going to leave a gap of about 3 minutes to make sure that everyone gets on, does their vote, and we'll see how it goes. Good luck. So Muriel's role in all of this is that she's watching the votes come in, and once she feels that everyone has had an opportunity to vote, then she will let us know if the motion is carried. Isn't this fun? You guys having fun yet? Yeah. It's fun. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. No, you only clear your vote if you've made an error. So you would just go, if you were voting, for example, approve, and you have one proxy and you'd go 1, 2. And it takes it automatically. You don't have to hit enter or anything like that. Once the vote is finished, the screen will clear. And then when I read the next motion, then Jenny hits the next one, and the next one will come up for you. I'd sing for you, but I can't. No guitar, no singing, no dancing, and I'm too fat to fly. I'm too fat to fly. Yes, Muriel. 192 votes in favor of having Muriel Klemetsky as our parliamentarian. Motion is carried. Thank you. Whew. Okay. One down. Are you guys ready? All right. Approval of the agenda. Our second order of business is to approve the agenda for our AGM, which of course you all have perused extensively. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda, or I'm making the motion to approve the agenda for October 24th, 2018 annual general meeting. May I have a second? Your name? Got that, Scott? All right. Are there any additions from the floor? Seeing none, we're opening the vote. We'll get better at this, really. Okay, how many of you are checking email right now at the same time? Texting, Facebooking, Snapchatting, Instagramming. When we did this last year, we actually had some variety. Like the first one, I think, was it 192? I remember last year, sometimes there was like 195 and sometimes 187, you know.
Claudia, the motion to approve the agenda is unanimous, 187 votes.
The motion is carried. Thank you, Muriel. All right, moving right along. Yeah. The majority. All right, moving on to the next one, approval of the annual meeting minutes of November 15th, 2017. So the motion is to approve the meeting minutes from the 2017 annual general meeting held on November 15th, 2017. Can I have a second? Scott Davis. Scott, you're supposed to say your name. All right, any discussion from the floor? The voting is open. Look how well this is going. I feel bad for our volunteers that are standing by at the microphone. You could sit if you like. Really, you should sit. It could be a while.
The motion to approve the meeting minutes from the 2017 annual general meeting has been approved. 181 in favor, 5 abstained, so it has passed.
Thank you. All right, at this point in time, you get to hear from someone else. So I'm turning the microphone over to Aldo Morabito, our treasurer, to give us a financial report.
Okay. Hi there. I'm Aldo Morabito. So I've been treasurer for 4 years for the association, and I'm going to just go over the highlights of what we've done this year. We've had a very good, successful year, and the association is very healthy. What you see up there right now is the cash flow statement. The first line on there is is the revenue, the net income that we made of $30,000. That is a net of two numbers. The conference made about $70,000 this year, and we had a loss from operation of about $40,000, giving us a net of $30,000. So again, it's still a good number compared to last year, where we only had $7,000. So in terms of the last number on that statement is the most important number, is the cash number. And I'll come back to the details, but the cash number went from $300,000 to $459,000. So you can see that the cash within the association is very robust, and the details, how we get from the 30 to the 459, we'll come back to. I want to go to the balance sheet, so can you just scroll ahead? So the balance sheet here, you can see basically the first line there is the cash number that the details are on the previous page. But you can see it's the most important number on that statement. It's the biggest number. You know, we have assets of $517,000, and you know, so of that cash number, about $200,000 is what we have in GICs, and the rest of it is liquid cash that we have not invested yet. In addition to that, we have the capital item of $34,000 is the database. The database was $100,000, but we're depreciating it $34,000 per year over 3 years, so that's what's left to depreciate. So the total assets of the association are $551. There's other numbers on there, like receivables and prepaids, which are not really significant, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. The other big number on there, you can see the accounts payable. We have $124,000 of accounts payable. Basically, it's what we owe to our, for the conference, we have to give 40% of what we made to, we have to share the profits, so it's not all CEWIL's profit, so that's in there. And we have some other conference expenses of about $60,000 we still have to pay. And then we have some deferred revenue. That's billings from the association that we billed that we have not earned that income yet, so that's shown as a liability. So that's the highlights of the balance sheet. Again, you can see that we're very, very healthy financially and liquid, which is very important. It's probably the best balance sheet I've seen in the last 4 years. So the association is doing very well. And our budgets for next year show that we will continue to do pretty well. We're going to probably go into a little bit of a negative on expenses. It will be higher than revenues next year, but about 30,000. So we have more than enough cash to cover that. So as a treasurer, I'm very happy with what the association has done. It's up to you. So we have two motions that we're going to. So there's a motion to approve the 2017-2018 audited financial statements as presented. Thank you. Do we have a second? Do we need a second? Okay. Is there any discussion from the floor? Says I have to wait now.
The motion to approve the 2017-18 audited financial statements as presented. In favor, 192, abstained 1. The motion is approved.
Okay, thank you. The next motion we have is the appointment of the auditor for 2018-2019, Peter Hodge. So I'd like to put a motion to approve the appointment of Peter Hodge as CEWIL auditor for 2018-2019. Do I have approval first? And second by? Thank you. Is there any discussion on the floor? Because we'll wait for the results. Peter has been our auditor for many years, so just so you know that. Yes, Mariel.
The motion to approve the appointment of Peter Hogg as the CEWIL auditor for 2018 and 19, 164 in favor. The motion is approved.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll turn it back to you, Claudia.
Thank you, Aldo. I know how busy you are, so we very much appreciate that you're here in person. So that brings me to my president's report. So I can't believe that it's only a year ago that we voted to expand our mandate. All of our board and all of the committees have been really hard at work since then. You know, at first it seemed easy, you know, expand the mandate. That's easy, right? Easy peasy. Well, when we sat down and really started to think about what we needed to do, well, it's a lot. It's a lot, and so it's been a year where everyone has worked really hard. We have made huge strides, and so I'm going to share some of those with you. I did a fairly comprehensive update at the town hall during the conference, so this will be more like a Coles Notes version. And by the way, thanks again to Concordia for hosting an amazing conference in Montreal. It was so great. So thank you to Concordia. So what have we been up to? Well, we tweaked our definition of work-integrated learning. We finalized our 9 forms of work-integrated learning, which of course includes co-op as one of those. We are working on a quality assurance framework that can be applied to any of the different types of work-integrated learning. Of course, we went through a rebrand. We launched our new mission, vision, brand manifesto, and logo. Up there in the corner. And as I've mentioned, all of our committees have been hard at work. And by the way, when I'm speaking about volunteers, we could really use more. I know it seems like a lot, but there's a couple of committees that are really suffering and need you. So it's an amazing opportunity to participate, and there's 3 committees in particular. Membership could really use some help. Communications could use some help. And the awards committee could use some help. So, what have we been up to? Since we had the vote last year, we very quickly moved to expand our National Co-op Week into National Co-op and Will Week. And since then, we've also combined that committee with our Communications Committee. Communications has been working on developing a new website with revised and updated content. And we hope to launch that in the not too distant future. You know, volunteers. Our Student of the Year Committee has completely revamped and its criteria and its process. And so turning it into our Student of the Year Awards, and I think you're really going to appreciate this new format. The board just approved 2 additional student awards yesterday. So we'll, of course, continue with our Co-op Student of the Year Award, 1 college, 1 university. And for this year, we're adding a Will Student of the Year Award that will encompass for now the other forms of work-integrated learning. In the future, we hope to expand that potentially to 9 different student awards, 1 for each of the 9 forms of work-integrated learning. And we're going to get that information out to you very soon. I know some of you are anxiously waiting because you're putting together your nominations. So we're super excited about that, and we'll get it out very soon. Our research committee has been and continues to undertake important research that ensures that we're standing on a strong pedagogical foundation. Not only is that committee doing a lot of work to support our expanded mandate, but also working to support CEWIL members across Canada who are interested in undertaking a research project. Continuing with the research theme, our international committee has been looking at the research that they need to undertake and what resources need to be developed to support work-integrated students going outside of Canada, as well as international students coming into Canada. Of course, our membership committee has put in many hours developing a new membership structure. You'll be hearing about that very shortly. Just a few more bylaws to approve. But they've also fully launched and continue to support our CEWIL Cafe. That's the 10,000 Coffees platform. I think those of you that have signed up for it probably received an email today connecting you with someone new. And if you haven't signed up, it's a wonderful opportunity to connect with other CEWIL members across the country. Our Pro-D committee has already put on several sessions that pertain to our expanded mandate. And of course, very shortly, we'll be hearing from our panel. Our National Statistics Database Committee, that has been handling, of course, our co-op data, but is looking at how the database can be expanded to include other forms of work-integrated learning data. And by the way, if you love stats, like I do, there's some wonderful stats in the annual report that could be very helpful for you in sharing that with your institution. Of course, we have our Accreditation Council, and they've been swamped with applications for accreditation. Since last November, 13 co-op programs have been accredited, and 12 more are under review. And yesterday at our board meeting, we moved to create a Quality Improvement Council, which will have two sort of branches underneath it. One will be our Accreditation Council, which you are familiar with, and the other will be our Quality Assurance Council. There'll be more information coming about that because, of course, they'll be looking for some subject matter experts to join them in this endeavor. So please think about that. And finally, our Government and External Relations Committee. Wow. The outreach that this committee has done with government, industry, and community partners is phenomenal. We would not be where we are today in terms of expanding our mandate and just our standing nationally, globally, without the work of this committee. They organized and hosted 2 national conversations on work-integrated learning. They've submitted a whole bunch of proposals on our behalf, attended events, and represented us on various panels and meetings. Amazing. We would not be where we are today in terms of our mission, which of course you all know, our mission, building the capacity to develop future-ready students through quality work-integrated learning, and our vision, to lead work-integrated learning in Canada, without the hard work of these committees, our councils, and our board of directors. I also wanted to give a shout out to our 2 employer reps on the board, Brian Convery and Patrick Gauthier. Without them, we would not have the vision that we do today. So we very much appreciate that. And also I wanted to give a big shout out to Jenny Benjamins, because every week we talked every week, and she was always so supportive of whatever I asked her to do, whatever questions I had, and as a new president, it was really great to have that support. She's an amazing support for our association, so thank you, Jenny. But I also wanted to say that, you know, it's been a lot of work in the last year. There was a lot of work the year before that, but really the work that's been done to get to the point that we are today goes back probably, I'd say, about 7 years or so. It's about 7 years ago that this association was potentially on the brink of disaster. It was at the time when Nora McRae came in as president, and at that point we started an uphill climb, and it's all the presidents since then that have led this charge. Nora, of course, Christine Arsenault, Gila Jones, Julie Walkley, Jasmine Bertiotti, Anne Fannin. So thank you to all of those presidents who have led us to this point. There's a great deal of work that still needs to be done, and perhaps it will take years before we consider ourselves to be steady state. But these are exciting times, and I am honored to be a part of it. Thank you. Next slide. Here we go. Before we start our next set of bylaw changes, I wanted to I have a little confession. We forgot. There's lots of excuses, but really, bottom line, we forgot to send out this bylaw change, and we, according to our bylaws, need to give 60 days notice. This is our expanded mandate, which you've already seen in various places, so we'll be sending out an e-vote. So when we do an e-vote on a bylaw change, we need to have 10% of our membership. Our membership, by the way, is at 795 now. We have 795 members, which is quite extraordinary. So we will need at least 80 approvals. So please, when you see this, please vote so that we can carry on with our business. So that's coming. And at this point in time, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Susan Psyche, who chairs the membership committee, to walk us through the next set of bylaw changes with the assistance of Christine Dawson.
I'm going to move it over so I don't get confused.
There's your note.
Thank you. And clickery thing. Awesome. Aha. Okay, I'm Susan Psyche, and I chair the membership committee, and I'm here today to talk about our bylaw changes that have been put forward. So last May, in accordance with the direction received from the CEWIL Canada's board, the membership committee was charged with refreshing the membership structure in support of the expanded mandate. In conducting this work, the committee had the goal of creating a membership structure that was equitable to the membership regardless of the size of the institution, which encouraged members from the WIL community to become engaged in the professional association. So specifically, these are our actual specific objectives that we had. So to clean up and simplify the membership fee structure, to adopt a new fee structure that was effectively revenue neutral based on the current membership level, which our membership now has increased, to make sure it was accessible to smaller institutions, and to adopt a more effective membership option for our employer and community partners. So the membership committee is aware that this concept of a voting cap is new territory. That said, the proposed membership structure strives to provide CEWIL Canada with a more equitable distribution of membership governance. The new model places a cap of 20 voting members per institution for those who subscribe to the unlimited membership option. Such institutions would be responsible for deciding how best to allocate which of their 20 members are the voting members. And as this does represent a transition, we are providing some options for you to consider in deciding who has the votes. So institutions might choose to split up their votes based on the size of their departments. It could be the WIL format or typology. It could, could be the percentage of department fee contribution. So departments that were contributing more to the membership might have more votes. It could be those who have the most engaged members involved in the association. It could be based on specific roles, managers, faculty members. It could be selected by an internal vote. It could even be delegated, and that before votes, the members could come together to decide what votes are going to be cast. The association's not going to be involved in deciding how the votes are allocated by institution. That will be completely up to each individual institution to figure out. So this shows you how the voting structure is set up. So first members, you've got the new pricing strategy here, which is very clean and simple compared to our old structure. And it shows the voting of 1, 2 to 19, and then 20 unlimited. So moving to the actual bylaw votes. This is where we get the very structural boring piece. So the motion is to revise the admission voting entitlement to align with the new distribution of voting of 20 maximum per institution or organizations. And specifically, we are striking the text, all members shall be entitled to vote, from section 4. Do I have a mover for the motion? Seconder? Great. Okay, any discussion from the floor? Okay. Now we...
Are there any from online?
Any online? Yep. Okay. So now we vote. Yep.
opposed 28, abstained 1. We have a 2/3 majority. The motion is approved.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so for the next vote, motion to add in classes for voting and non-voting members and revise the categories to reflect the different type of members: institutions, employer and community partners, and honorary. Do I have someone to put forward the motion?
Anne.
Got Anne? Thank you. And the seconder? Corey? Okay, any discussion from the floor? Or online? Okay. Oh, yeah.
The reminder, but there's an M parentheses missing at the end of the paragraph in the new 4.02, I think.
Yes. And that
Can-
sounds like a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Is that
Friendly
needed?
amendment, Muriel? To affix the lack of parentheses?
And parentheses.
We're missing a,
After honorary.
Okay, so we've inserted a parenthesis at the end of the honorary. Can I have a motion to approve that?
Julie?
Julie,
Yeah.
seconder.
Heather?
Any discussion?
Call the vote?
We
Nice.
have that written up. Can we see by a show of hands? All in favor of the amendment in terms of inserting?
You don't need to do that. I think it's just the vote on the next.
As a
It's just-
parliamentarian, we have approval for that parenthesis to be
You
added.
don't need to do
Okay.
Now can we go back
Do-
to the original motion?
Yes, which is still up here with the parentheses now added.
that. So we want to vote on the friendly
'Kay.
amendment now. Call the vote.
We'll go ahead with the vote.
Just the motion and needed to just approve the friendly, but yeah. Here to vote.
Yeah.
The motion to add in classes for voting and non-voting members and revise the categories to reflect the different types of members: institutions, employer and community partners, and honorary. In favor, 157, opposed 26. Those in favors has it. It is approved.
Thank you. Okay, so the third motion to define the different member classes, voting and non-voting, and categories: institution, employer and community partners, and honorary. And I'll just point out there was a question for an example of honorary. That might be those who've retired and want to stay with the association, that would be a good fit, and the fee could or could not be waived up to the association. Whereas employer and community partners, that would be those who are either a government agency, industry partner that we're working with for the association. Okay, do I have someone who would like to move the motion? Thank you. Seconder?
Could you say your name louder?
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, let's move to a vote.
The different member classes, voting and non-voting, and categories, including institutions, employer, and community partners, and honorary. In favor, 164. Opposed, 21. Abstained, 2. Those in favor has it. It is approved.
Great. Thank you. Okay, motion 4. Motion to add a section on voting rights to reflect a maximum of 20 votes per institution or organization. Can I have a mover, please?
Bruce Wilson.
Thanks. Seconder? Anne? Discussion? Oh, thank you. Okay, we'll move to a vote.
reflect a maximum of 20 votes per each institution or organization. In favor, 155. Opposed, 28. Abstained, 1. The motion is approved.
Great. Thank you. So the next one is a very exciting one. It's a motion to edit the subsequent bylaw numbers due to the addition of the previous new voting rights section. Can I have a mover, please? Yeah. Seconder. Matt. Great. Any discussion? We'll move to a vote. Oh, yeah.
My only job is to make sure she votes.
184, abstained 2. The motion is adopted.
Great. Okay, we're almost there. So the next one is a motion to edit the persons entitled to attend a meeting of members to include all members. So it's a minor edit of adding an S to honorary members. Could I have a mover, please?
And NS and removing.
Oh, sorry, and removing, striking voting from the script. Yep. Seconder? Thank you. Discussion? Move to a vote.
The motion to edit the persons entitled to attend a meeting of members to include all members, with the edit of the S, and B, any other person on the invitation of the chair of the meeting or with the consent of the meeting. In favor, 183, it's unanimous.
Great.
The motion is approved.
Okay, last one, which is a motion to amend the voting eligibility during membership meetings to reflect 20 maximum for each institution and organization. You can see the actual script that's struck out here and the word added in. Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Julie. Seconder, please. Great. Discussion?
Heather Workman.
Yep.
Has any thought been given to how those members will be identified at the meetings? Some passcode or ability to actually identify themselves as the appropriate voting member?
So that's some. Can I?
Yeah,
let
yeah,
take
I'll let
that
you.
one? Yeah. So this is something that Jenny and I have talked a little bit about, and after this has been approved, we'll have to look at that. There may be some changes in XWare, the system behind the scenes for electronic voting, and it may change how we, are operating our meetings a little bit in terms of ensuring that the right votes are with the right people. So once this is passed, then we'll do that work of ensuring that it's done appropriately and transparently.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move to the last vote.
The motion to amend the voting eligibility during membership meetings to reflect 20 maximum for each institution and organization. In favor, 156, opposed 28, abstained 1. The motion is approved.
Excellent. They have all passed. We are done now with bylaw changes. And Claudia, you're back up. Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
So I now get to have the distinct pleasure of introducing the brave souls who put their names forward to serve on the 2018-2019 CEWIL Board of Directors. So of course, we have Christine, who's now officially our president. President-elect is Kara Krezek, sitting here at the front. I'm now the past president. Woo! Sorry. Secretary is Scott Daniels. Our Alberta rep is Stacey Godet-Sharp. Atlantic is Doug Gallant. BC Yukon is Heather Workman. Manitoba Nunavut is Kelly Mahoney, who is online. Ontario is Nora McRae. Quebec is Elaine Tremblay. Saskatchewan, Trudy Osborne. Director-at-Large Universities, Andrea Giles. Director-at-Large Colleges, Elaine Fenner. Director-at-Large Will Universities, Susan Psyche. Director-at-Large Will College, Matthew Rempel. Our employer reps are still Patrick Gauthier and Brian Convery, and our treasurer, Aldo Morabito, your new board of directors. So my final order of business today is to welcome your incoming president, Christine Dawson, to the podium. Christine, it's all yours.
And I will adjust the mic down again. Thank you, Claudia. So it's my distinct pleasure to stand here before you today as the new president of CEWIL Canada. I am especially proud to lead this work and provide a strong voice for the college sector this year. This space that we all work in is undergoing an unprecedented amount of attention as work-integrated learning and experiential learning seem to be the cool kids in school right now. What government and industry don't seem to realize that we've been cool for over 45 years. Regardless of the fact that co-op and work-integrated learning are getting a sudden burst of attention, the secret that we all know is that CEWIL Canada and its predecessor, CAFKE, have slowly but surely been doing amazing work to support quality experiences for students and employers. And we will keep doing this work long after any attention may fade. And that is because of you, the practitioners and faculty and managers and directors of co-op and WIL programs and experiences across the country. So about all of this attention, it has certainly kept the Government and External Relations Committee very busy. On behalf of CEWIL, we submitted a written response to HUMA, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities, study on experiential learning and pathways to employment for Canadian youth. And we were actually called to speak to our submission in Ottawa. The report was just released, and our comments were quoted numerous times in the report. We also submitted a pre-budget 2019 consultation paper, and while we were not called to speak to it, our requests were very much aligned with the messages of many other organizations. And I have a very good feeling that it is going to be a budget rich with resources for student transition, to support student transition to employment. An example of our increasing reputation in this space, CEWIL was called by ESDC to consult on proposed changes to labor standards for interns in federally regulated workplaces. And CEWIL led a consortium of Universities Canada, Colleges and Institutes Canada, and Polytechnics Canada in submitting and proposing changes to improve work-integrated learning student conditions in federally regulated workplaces. We are regularly being invited to present our expertise by numerous post-secondary consortia partners because CEWIL is seen, and rightly so, as the subject matter expert in this area. This year was also busy with the expansion of partners in the Student Work Placement Program, formerly known as SWILP. And a new group of GER members took on the responsibility of managing those relationships, offering new series of webinars. CEWIL took a leadership position, investing in hosting 2 national conversations this year, one in February in Toronto, one in August in Montreal, where we invited partners from across provincial and federal jurisdictions, industry associations, students, employers, government, PSIs, and we set the stage for our next initiative, which is launching a strategic national WIL council later this fall. None of this exciting work would have been possible, though, in my opinion, without the foresight and leadership to expand our mandate last year. Thank you so much to our outgoing past president, Ann Fannin, my partner in GER crime, for shepherding that change in 2017. And to those who came before her, that Claudia mentioned, that were so pivotal in moving us to this place that we are now. Without that leadership, without all of those activities building us to the place we are now, we would not be in this position. And so beyond the work that GR was doing externally, there was a tremendous amount of work that needed to be done internally to align that expanded mandate with the reality of who our association is. And Claudia talked quite a lot about the extensive work that the committees did in this regard. So thank you, Claudia, for your leadership and hard work in rebranding our association, updating our website, which is an ongoing affair, and which she has said she is committed to continuing, which is wonderful, and reimagining all of these committees and their activities. And this was done along with, of course, the committed volunteers, committee chairs of our association. And we need to continue to move forward to expand from our activities and support this new mandate. We now collect national data on co-op. Thank you to Julie and Jasmine and all of those involved in launching this database in 2016. Friendly reminder, submit your data November 16th. Data helps us advocate. Our next steps will be to look to potentially expand the database to capture other forms of will, to expand our professional development, to allow for capacity building for will practitioners and faculty, to increase will research, in order to allow us to make data-driven recommendations. I'm excited to be working with the folks from RBC, and we have a bit of an exciting announcement that was just made yesterday, but thanks in very large part to one of our employer representatives on our board of directors, Brian Convery, who very much facilitated the connections and relationship and shepherded this opportunity. CEWIL was presented yesterday with the announcement that we were successful in receiving an RBC Future Launch grant in the amount of $50,000 for this year and $50,000 for next year, which will do a tremendous amount to move the work of our association forward. So if we could take a moment and thank RBC and thank Brian. So, while it's clear that in order to make the most of this moment, there is significant work to be done in the months ahead, probably years ahead, I am very fortunate to be taking this leadership role at a time when CEWIL is finally starting to be seen as the leader that it is. Thanks to all of those who've worked so tirelessly to put us into this exciting position. And thank you to those taking on the challenge now. We have a robust group of volunteers, I think Claudia mentioned over 100, on many active committees, maybe more. And I would also especially like to recognize our returning employer representative board members, Brian from RBC, Patrick Gauthier from the Public Service Commission, and Aldo Morabito from Kiewit. These individuals volunteer their time, but they have day jobs outside of this work that we do. They're one step further removed from the work that we do, and I really think that they deserve additional appreciation for those efforts to support CEWIL. So I was going to introduce the team that has volunteered to serve our association for the upcoming year, but they've already been announced. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to repeat their names. I think we've just heard them. But what I will say is they're a phenomenal group of experienced leaders in both co-op and work-integrated learning from colleges and universities across our great country. So join me in welcoming them to the new board. Thank you for agreeing to serve. Finally, Claudia, would you be able to join me here for a moment? So I'd just like to say a few words about Claudia's significant contribution to our association, not just this past year, but over many, many years. In her president-elect year, Claudia co-chaired one of the most successful CEWIL conferences in Vancouver, BC. And it's a good thing that she participates in, it's triathlons, right? Close. Okay. Because she must have some amazing endurance, because she slid right into, from co-chairing that conference, into hosting the AGM and PD event in Victoria last year, where the mandate expansion was approved, and voila, she was the president of an association that needed a rebranding, a new website, and all of the trickle-down effects of that change are on our entire association operations. That work, while maybe not as visible or lauded, was absolutely integral to moving our position forward. And thankfully, for me, she's agreed to continue to move some of these initiatives forward in her past president year. And so, just as the smallest token, would you please join me in thanking Claudia Stirling for her dedication to the association and receive this small gift on our behalf, which is a memento of this year of change for CEWIL. Thanks to Anne for helping with this special gift. Thank you, Claudia. I think I can speak for Kara also when I say I'm looking forward to working together to continuing to make exceptional progress for CEWIL next year. I don't know if there's a picture.
The best part is that it comes in a bag that says, "Let's party." Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. So, she's taking it all. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here today in person and online, and for the incredible work that you do on a daily basis to provide rich and authentic learning experiences for our students. Your passion and dedication already makes CEWIL an incredible organization that I'm so proud to be part of. So before we adjourn, I'd like to say a final special thanks to a few folks who helped make this day come together: Shirley, Craig, Kitty, Jenny, Bruce, and additional volunteers from the team here at Conestoga. Thanks so much for your hard work and attention to details. Bruce isn't from Conestoga, but he got lumped into that. Thank you, Bruce. A few housekeeping reminders. We're having a bit of a bio break and refreshments in the atrium, but we are running a little bit late. Don't forget to visit the My Tax table, network with your colleagues, but if you could be back here promptly to start the PD panel at 2 p.m. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn the 2018 AGM? Bruce Wilson, seconded. Heather Workman? All those in favor? Thank you.
Could I have the panelists join us at the front, please? Okay. Now you have a wireless. It's this one. If you're comfortable with handheld.
Yeah. Oh, I'm okay here.
Yeah. You said you wanted to go on here, so.
Yeah, well, if we need, if it comes up, I might.
I'll get it for you. I'm here. I'm your right-hand person.
Awesome.
Literally.
Yes. So we'll just say the colors of their phone. So it doesn't have like their like from. I think you sent me something before that had said like the faculty that they're in, like discipline or their title, or you had something.
I don't think I did.
No?
I don't
Okay.
remember.
No problem. No problem. This is great.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting on the panel, but I'm more of a content creator. So how is it going to be structured? Like we introduce ourselves at the beginning, and then it's just questions. Okay. I just want to know what to expect.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is I'm going to do a brief intro at the beginning. I'm then going to say that each panelist is going to speak for 5 minutes. And so I will introduce each panelist at a time. So the first person will go. Yeah. 5 minutes. I'll introduce the second panelist. So everybody will do their 5 minutes. We'll then open up the floor to questions. Once the questions come in, we have a new program, Slido.
Okay.
How to use. We're very excited about it.
Almost 24 hours into it.
Once a question is posed, I will be on the mic here, and I will look to the panelists to see who wants to. Okay. So I'm going to be looking for some sort of like nonverbal cue.
Yeah, like yeah.
And almost like we do like 2 or 3 max for any question, and probably try to switch it around based on
The content.
the content of the
Yeah.
questions. Yeah. So I will not put you on the spot.
Okay.
But I'll just kind of be looking
Like,
like
discuss this one.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And the 5 minutes that we're talking, so this is mention that in his email. That's okay. That's fine. So 5 minutes that we're talking really is like the 5 minutes we have just to talk about our area as we're going. So it's like an explanation. Yeah. So people don't know what.
Yeah. So kind of like describe your program.
Yeah. Mine's apprenticeship, right? So it's very
And then
misunderstood.
yes, well, that's perfect. That's why it's perfect to speak.
Yeah.
And then the student success story. So it's kind
Yeah.
of tying it back to what does success look like in this thing.
Right. Yeah, and the student success rate, I mean, we have a million of them.
And trust your judgment on how much time you want to spend on
Yeah,
each
so
part of
I
that.
don't know if it'll, I don't even know if it'll end up being a full 5 minutes. Are we actually, are you gonna hold us to that 5 minutes a little bit? Like, I might have something in front of me because sometimes when I get nervous, I get a little carried away.
Oh, it will be a problem if so you okay. So you are second.
Yeah.
It would be good to I gotta find Andrea Giles who's first because it'll be good to keep the pace, set the pace at the beginning.
I think so too.
Right, to make sure that we should stick closely to it because then it will leave time for.
I think in front of myself, I just might have like a little timer on my phone just so that I know where I'm
Okay.
at. Okay.
It's a good question. Do we want to? Does everybody want a timer, like a 1 minute mark?
But I think I'll have I'll be able to gauge.
I don't want to be
No.
like that's not my intention.
You don't want
But
to leave people to their own devices.
But I respect that people could recognize the 5-minute goal. It is. So just kind of knowing that you're on, right? Yeah, you're up there.
Yours will be 5 minutes or won't be 5 minutes.
I have no intention.
That's fantastic.
So maybe
You know what's hilarious is when I teach, I don't even think about 5 minutes whenever I'm like, I have a 2-hour class. Give it to me, I'm telling you. However, when somebody says you have 5 minutes, talk about a crucial topic like apprenticeship, introduce it to people and help them figure it out. I'm like, 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe I will time just so that I have it on my radar and can even just give you guys like a nod. But I won't do a 1-minute warning. I'll just let you know if you've gone over.
We have it. No, I'm Nadine. Nice to meet you. I work here at Consultation. Yeah, in our trades and apprenticeship. But I used to work in Co-op and so. So today I'm just speaking to apprenticeship. Elementary school trades and
So the other thing,
but
the other one thing I'll say.
there's trades school, but then there's also apprenticeships, and they're different. But I have 5 minutes. Sorry.
No, I think that's really interesting.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Because trades operate like a program. You can do a certificate program, you can do a diploma program, typical or advanced, and it's not apprenticeship. No.
Should we teach them in cinema?
Well, this is the complete.
Interesting.
It's the unique nature, and with apprenticeship, I mean, usually it's very difficult to draw a line, like where does the work integrated learning starts at the end of apprenticeship.
Yeah, I don't.
Actually,
Matt Medley.
right? So I know it's like 5 minutes.
We're going to get going in the next couple of minutes, please, if you return to your seats. Thank you.
I'm gonna leave my cooking skills because I'm not.
Don't expect it to be there when
You know what? I've been picking off the 5 fingers. So see that I'm gonna be It's free.
you look like a clean person.
So there's a number of, there's the pathway, essentially. You know what's interesting is I've worked in it for so long. Research. We make the assumption that it's
Do you need me to say words about that? good idea not to put the two mats next to each other.
Nadine. Very nice to meet you. Where are you from?
Waterloo.
Great. We're neighbors already.
Yes, we should do more stuff together. At our level, we can hire up. I'm thinking about entrepreneurship. Conestoga entrepreneurship.
I wasn't here for vacation.
Yeah, I wasn't here.
I have it on my screen. Hi, how are you? How are you? Can I call a 2-minute warning?
Yeah.
I think we're ready. Okay.
On the panel, I'm listed to talk about
You don't.
entrepreneurship.
You want to just
I'm just going to roll
do
into
it
it.
so
Yeah.
you know to mention about
Yeah.
for the
All
site?
covered.
All covered? Great. Do I have to do this, or do you want to say on behalf of, at the end, do you want to do it, or do you want
Right.
2-minute warning, please, and we'll get going on the PD event.
Teaches
You feeling okay? I didn't receive too many plant questions, frankly. I asked a lot of people, and I didn't have too many.
I told the panelists that we'll be going to them for questions.
like a big truck.
Practicum in social service.
So your specific topic?
And when you say practicum,
I think that we have 5 minutes to
it's overseen.
I'd be fine if I didn't say it wasn't okay first, and if I just now. I was laughing earlier saying I was.
I was told by your panel who wants to
There are many disciplines.
Tell me I
I'm
have
going for
to talk about a topic,
And it's funny because
I start.
no, I have
I
it.
start.
SSW is one of those ones that we don't really like.
I'm on an academic right now, but I'm in a discipline.
I think it does. Because you don't need the hours and license rate.
We'll see how this goes.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 2018 AGM and PD event at Conestoga College. Please take your seats and we will get rolling right into our panel on will ways. Thank you, Robert. Good afternoon. I'm Bruce Wilson on behalf of CEWIL and the PD Committee, the Professional Development Committee. I'd like to welcome you to Conestoga College. We are featuring a panel today, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about that and how that's working. We're going to have a YouTube feed out to the rest of the world. All our practitioner colleagues that are out there, they're going to be watching. And all of you get a chance to ask questions of the panel by going to Slido, sli.do, sign in with your name. There's a passcode C149. and you can pose questions. I'll be monitoring them here. I will pass them to our moderator, and we will let the show roll that way. So thank you for that. We have 7 members on the panel, each representing a particular mode of work-integrated learning, and they'll be describing that mode and perhaps a student success story. So thank you for signing in to Slido. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Ashley Stirling from the University of Toronto. She's going to be our moderator for the panel. If you'd welcome Ashley, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be moderating this panel today. I am a new member of CEWIL, and I come to this organization with keen enthusiasm for the potential of co-op education and work-integrated learning across Canada. I come from various perspectives. I am a researcher at heart. I do a lot of work in the area of teaching and learning pedagogy, specifically in experiential learning and in work-integrated learning. I have experience as a practitioner in developing experiential education programming across my faculty, which is the Faculty of Kinesiology and Physical Education. And so in that role, I've developed professional placements in the healthcare field, which would be interpreted as clinical placements, field placements. I also developed a number of service learning courses, more in line with the pedagogy of community engaged learning. The other perspective that I bring is that of my newest role as an academic administrator. So in my current role as Vice Dean Academic Affairs in the Faculty of Kinesiology and Physical Education, I currently oversee our undergraduate and graduate programs. So that includes our Bachelor of Kinesiology, as well as our 3 graduate programs, our Masters of Exercise Science, Masters of Professional Kinesiology, and a Doctor of Philosophy. So from that perspective, I spend a lot of time thinking about trends in higher education, where we are now, but importantly, where we need to be in 10, 20 years, and how we need to develop our academic curricula and programs to be the most effective for our students and for the broader communities in which we serve. This is a very exciting time in higher education as we're seeing a lot of changes. We are seeing vast changes in student learning needs. Students no longer want to be taught exclusively by a professor at the front of the room. I can tell you from personal experience how many students are simply on YouTube and Twitter while I think that they're listening to what I'm lecturing about. They want to get hands-on experience. They want to engage with community in meaningful and impactful ways. They want to get an edge in the job market, and they want to see the direct relevance of what they're learning in the classroom to applied work opportunities and where they see themselves in their careers, both while they're a student and very shortly after graduation. We're seeing a change in what the broader society is asking of higher education. So there's growing societal and economic needs for enhancing the career readiness of our students, of contributing more deliberately and strategically to economic development through the preparation of our students to contribute to the growing needs in the labor market. The other change that we're seeing is the call for innovation and knowledge exchange. And so criticisms of the ivory tower, of universities and colleges being a hub for information sharing within their own walls, is now being challenged and questioned how we can actually broaden that to learn with and from the broader communities and industries in which we interact, in which we are situated. So how are our students both contributing to innovation, entrepreneurship, the development of new ideas, new business, new industry, as well as how are we working strategically with industry and community around us to share information and take it outside of our academic research journals and make it more applied and relevant to the individuals that we are actually helping to work with. Thinking about the field of experiential learning more specifically. For all these reasons, work-integrated learning is on the rise, and there are a wealth of opportunities for growth in this domain. We have heard already today about how the increased focus has highlighted the importance and relevance of work-integrated learning. There is more and more intention and recognition of work-integrated learning, more demand for work integrated learning opportunities, and we're seeing federal budgets and provincial budgets dedicating more and more resources to this pedagogical approach. With this, we're also seeing a tremendous growth in the field, both in research and in practice. I think the growth of this organization in itself is reflective of that, and as we already heard earlier today in the previous AGM, some of the advancements that are already occurring is definitions, typologies of work-integrated learning, development of quality assessment frameworks, potential of it leading to accreditation, maybe extending beyond co-op to the other 9 types of work-integrated learning. These are all exciting directions that are welcomed by all stakeholders involved, including students, institutions, as well as the employers, industry, government, and all other stakeholders that are involved in this process. One of the most exciting things to me about the growth of the field of work-integrated learning is the growing sense of community. So coming from the health sciences, when I initially started off in this field, I didn't have a scholarly society to go to, or a practical society to go to be mentored, to learn from best tips, practices in that area. In many ways, we worked as silos. I learned very quickly the boundaries in which I was supposed to work within with negotiating particular placement arrangements. But there wasn't necessarily a community of practice talking about what are quality indicators, how should we be developing these experiences, why are we developing these experiences, and where should the field be going. One of the really exciting things about the recent advancements in CAFKE, broadening their mandate to co-op education and work-integrated learning, is really bringing on and celebrating the diversity of different forms of work-integrated learning, bringing us all under one umbrella, really in a collective pursuit towards enhancing the educational quality of these experiences and working together more strategically to ultimately enhance work-integrated learning across Canada. So with that, I am then going to turn to our panelists, who I'm really excited to hear their particular stories and experiences with the various forms of work-integrated learning. How the panel is going to work is each panelist is going to have 5 minutes to talk about a specific form of work-integrated learning. I ask that we hold all questions until all panelists have had a chance to speak. Once all panelists have finished their talks, I will then be opening it up to the forum, and we will be taking questions through Slido. And I'm hoping that we are able to engage in a very fruitful discussion at that time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Andrea Giles, who comes to us from the University of Victoria.
I am speaking on community service learning at the University of Victoria. The definition from the Canadian Association of Service Learning, CASL, is community service learning, CSL, is an educational approach that integrates service in the community with intentional learning activities. The CEWIL definition expands this definition to the following. Community service learning, CSL, integrates meaningful community service with classroom instruction and critical reflection to enrich the learning experience and strengthen communities. In practice, students work in partnership with a community-based organization to apply their disciplinary knowledge to a challenge identified by the community. This expanded definition highlights that CSL programs are most effective when they include key elements drawn from experiential education theory, especially developing critical thinking and intentionally facilitating reflection. CSL courses assist students to make meaning from their community experiences, to connect experiences outside the classroom to more theoretical study, and to develop as individuals in relation to their values, their sense of social responsibility, and their leadership skills. This learning intention and facilitated reflection is what differentiates CSL from volunteerism. At the University of Victoria, we have a large network of community-engaged learning courses, which we call CEL, of which CSL, Community Service Learning, is part. The CEL is the broader framework we use, and it encompasses courses that have a service-based element, as well as courses that engage the community through research or project-based outcomes. One example of a successful CSL course we have been offering is a third-year interdisciplinary course in the social sciences, which has been offered twice a year since 2012. The course is called Working in the Community. It combines classroom study of community organizations, civic engagement, and professional competencies with a 40-hour service requirement with a community organization. After the 40 hours of service, students reflect critically on the experience from various social sciences perspectives. To support placements and community outreach, our co-op program solicits community postings and matches students to community organizations. Some students may choose to find their own service placement or work with their organization for which they've already been volunteering. Our co-op team also provides support in the classroom, working with students to reflect on their competency development and their learning goals. Overwhelmingly, CSL is a success. Students report that the opportunity to engage with the community brings learning to life and improves communication and leadership skills. Our community partners report that having students in their workplace brings fresh ideas and enthusiasm. Many of our students volunteer with these organizations they were paired with long after the course finishes. That said, CSL and CEL more broadly can have challenges. Student readiness and commitment varies, which can have impacts on community partners and the breadth of student learning. To address that, we have outlined strategies for approaching these challenges, which include open communication, managing student expectations and community expectations as well, and building scaffolding for success. We have resources available for faculty to use to overcome some of these challenges as well. Of course, the time and resources required to develop new CEL courses or create CEL within existing courses is also an issue. UVic offers a community engaged learning grant that faculty can apply to help offset the costs of course development with the goal of expanding community engaged learning further across all departments and all faculties. I brought a handout that you might find useful on community engaged learning at the University of Victoria. It outlines the key aspects of community engaged learning at UVic and as well defines some of the types of activities that falls under this initiative.
Thank you, Andrea. Up next, we have Nadine Ginetta from Conestoga College.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm here to actually speak with you about apprenticeship as work-integrated learning. When people think of apprenticeship, often we think of the skilled trades. It seems to be a topic of conversation that everybody supports and will speak well of, but is often misunderstood, if I'm honest with you. So I want to help clarify some of those pieces over the next 5 minutes, hopefully get you a little curious if you don't know much about it, and if you're familiar with it, then you're going to hear it a second time, I guess. And so apprenticeship is actually quite different from when we say the trades. So for instance, here at Conestoga, I work in the trades and apprenticeship department, and they're actually different from each other. So trades, we have trades programs here, certificate programs, diploma programs, where students can come in and train into an area that would be considered as a trades area. Apprenticeship is actually different from that, not mutually exclusive from each other, but different. When we're talking about apprenticeship, we're talking about on-the-job learners who are registered apprentices who are coming to our institution to complete the in-class portion that's required as an apprentice. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. Typically, people apprentice within the skilled trades. So there's our connection between trades and apprenticeship. Within the skilled trades, areas that are eligible for apprenticeship, there's actually 4 different sectors that people don't always know about. So we have the service industry trades, we have our motive power trades, which is maybe truck and coach, okay, things related to motive power. We have our construction trades, which would be electricians, plumbers, those areas that you would see in perhaps residential new builds or renovation. And then we also have our industrial trades, which is more like millwright and welding, okay? So they're broken into these 4 different sectors. And within those sectors, all of these identified areas are apprenticeable. So what we mean by that is there is the opportunity for people who want to become apprentices. Well, essentially, here are the pathways. Maybe I'll start with that. People who want to become an apprentice, a typical pathway is for them to first find an employer. So very different from maybe some of the work integrated learning pathways you'll hear about is that it starts with employment. An apprentice would enter into a paid employment contract with an employer that has the ability to sign them as an apprentice, and perhaps I'll talk about that if we get the chance. What would happen is that once entered into this agreement, the apprentice and this employer would register the apprentice as an apprentice with whatever the provincial or territorial regulatory body is. So here in Ontario, we have the Ministry of Training Colleges or Universities, or MASTI, whatever you would like to call them here. And that is who employers and apprentices would register with. And then we also have a regulatory body that apprentices, after they get confirmation of that registration, the Ontario College of Trades is who they would also have to maintain their licensing with for now. Based on an announcement made yesterday, we're not sure of that right now or how that will change, but bear with me. Then that apprentice would work with that employer in paid employment, earning the different levels of their apprenticeship. So apprenticeships involve a number of hours that have to be gained on the job, as well as different levels of training that happen within a training delivery agent, like a college or a polytechnic institution. Perhaps it could be a union if they're registered, or another type of a registered agency to be able to provide that training. Typically, apprentices, depending on what the trade is, will take between 2 to 5 years to complete their apprenticeship, moving back and forth between on-the-job training and in school. Now, the percentage of time that they spend in these is quite different from other work-integrated learning areas. So in apprenticeship, about 80 to 85% of their time in an apprenticeship is spent on the job, and about 15 to 20% of their time is spent in class, participating in technical training. All right? It's interesting, I was speaking with one of our chairs in trades and apprenticeship, and I said, well, where do you think work integrated learning starts and ends? And she said, I don't know if I have an answer for you. Perhaps the whole experience itself fits work integrated learning just because of the nature of the experience. All of the components of apprenticeship are based on curriculum or training standards that have to be followed, whether it's on the job with that employer. They don't just get to pick and choose what those hours will be. They have a very specific training schedule that they follow, and an apprentice must be apprenticed underneath a certified journey person. So not anybody could have an apprentice working with them. They have to have gone through the apprenticeship on their own in order to apprentice someone else. A little bit more information that I want to make sure I cover, because I only have 5 minutes, is maybe some of the benefits of apprenticeship. Apprentices experience quite a bit of success, different from maybe some traditional institutional pathways that students would go through. With our apprentices, in our experience here at Conestoga, they typically have an easier time in school. Perhaps it's because they're already working with an employer and they start with learning the how, and then when they move into the in-school portion of their training, they learn the why. Whereas I've worked in cooperative education before and went through university and did 5 of my own co-op terms, and I can say my experience of that was opposite. I learned the why, and then when I was on my co-op term, I learned the how. Apprenticeship seems to be a little bit different. We've noticed that attendance in our apprenticeship programs is actually better, much better than our other programs. possibly also because it's mandated. We track their attendance. We're able to do that as part of our requirements, but nonetheless, attendance is much better. Their job is riding on it, really. They're already attached to employer. They have that paid employment. They know that the employer is expecting them to complete apprenticeship. And typically, it's a 70% pass within apprenticeships, so it's not to be gawked at, so to speak. We have better homework completion rates with these students. The average age is a little bit older than our non-apprenticeship programs. And as I had mentioned before, the actual work integrated learning person is perhaps a little bit less identifiable than some of the other traditional methods of work integrated learning. Just quickly to speak a little bit to Conestoga, and I would encourage questions after because I certainly don't have enough time to tell everybody everything about apprenticeship, but here at Conestoga we are Ontario's largest provider of apprenticeships. Somebody said to me earlier, shh, don't tell Mohawk, but we are, and we have around 4,000 apprentices at Conestoga, so that's not just people in trades programs. That number would increase if we included trades program members. We're talking about registered apprentices coming to Conestoga to complete their levels. In over 29 different apprenticeships, the last time we counted, that might be one or two off. And certainly the majority of our campuses are now offering apprenticeship programs. We probably need more capacity for that. When it comes to apprenticeship, I want to just end by saying, giving you a couple of statistics. The Globe and Mail had reported that by 2020, Canada as a whole, so our country, faces a shortage of about 1 million tradespeople. And that number goes up by about 200,000 by 2025, according to projections. And by 2025, it's said that about 40% of jobs available in our country are actually going to be within the skilled trades. So considering apprenticeship, even though it sometimes feels like work integrated learning's little brother or little sister, it's actually quite a viable, robust work integrated learning pathway that I would love to help people understand a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. That was very, very informative. I'd now like to introduce you to Dr. Cheng from the University of Waterloo.
Thank you very much. So I'm here to talk about the topic of entrepreneurship at the University of Waterloo. At the Conrad School of Entrepreneurship and Business, the school is about 15 years old. Our flagship program is a Master's of Business Entrepreneurship and Technology. And the program actually has a built-in practicum component, so it speaks to the experiential learning piece. About 3.5 years ago, the Conrad Center launched a minor in entrepreneurship program across all faculties of the university, except for engineering. Engineering, because of naming designation, it's called an option in entrepreneurship. So at the undergrad level, we have courses designated BET, Business Entrepreneurship and Technology. Students get exposure in courses, and I'm also the Enterprise Co-op Coordinator. So we have 2 co-op programs that allow students to develop entrepreneurial mindsets. One is the Enterprise Co-op program, which I'm the coordinator for, where students interview to be accepted into a small cohort to dedicate a work term exclusively to build their ventures as a startup. And then we have an engineering exclusive program for first-year engineering students, where the first-year engineering students in the winter and the spring term work with startups on 5-week rotations. So the Enterprise Co-op program is for those pretty motivated students who want to dedicate a work term to develop their entrepreneurial startup businesses. And then for the first-year students, it's an opportunity then for them at the beginning of the cycle of their career at the university to experience the environment of working with a startup. In the lecture series, we actually have some courses that are very experiential. We have a 4th-year course that centers around a social entrepreneurship competition called the Hult Prize. It's an international competition. And a colleague of mine, she teaches that course, and basically students in the course learn about social enterprise and entrepreneurship. And they also get an opportunity to form a team in the class and pitch at the competition, and the competition is held every year, and the competition spans past the course, but many students are very engaged to develop some of their passions in this space for social justice and social good. Some of the example, specifically as an example for student success, the startup course that I teach is for students who want to develop their ventures, and the example I'll show is an art student who's, she's a urban planning student, but she also does artwork on her own passions as a company. And she did enterprise co-op to develop basically all the business processes to run her own business. And then we have first-year engineering students that she took on placements for 5 weeks. And the first-year engineering students get to see the challenges with a lot of resource constraints of what the startup environment is. And I think what you're looking at is a couple of students were working on some of the artwork pieces that the enterprise co-op student was developing for the work term. Some of the outcomes we want to promote is not necessarily a successful startup because it's a difficult path. We want to promote an entrepreneurial innovation mindset. So all the courses and the programs in Conrad are interdisciplinary. So there's no exclusive courses that are only for one faculty. So students get to see the other faculty of classmates within the courses. And by promoting entrepreneurial mindset, we think there's a bigger win because in entrepreneurial mindset, they have to develop an ability to deal with uncertainty. It's not in-a-box pedagogy per se. So they have to do andragogy, learn as they go. And so in my venture course, as well as the social enterprise course, they actually have to go out and pitch to host organizations and competitions to see where they stand on a lot of merits for that space. So we promote entrepreneurial and innovation mindset, and then recently at the University of Waterloo, our experiential learning program just started. So we're now in another phase where we're trying to promote more interdisciplinary collaborations. A specific example we just piloted in my venture course was the students in the course work on their ventures, and they have to work out how to develop business models. And then we have a student team opt-in project where they work with a community partner to help the community partner's business model validation. And the students, while they're in the classroom, believe they know how to do the business model because it's an exercise they have to develop. When they work with a community partner, they get a lot of excuses of why things won't work because real companies have a lot of resource constraints and challenges. So sometimes the students actually learn a lot more from the community partner engagement piece. So that's some of the pieces I'd like to share with you, and welcome to have everyone share their own perspectives on entrepreneurship. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Cheng. Up next, we have Matthew Medlin from the University of Toronto.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for inviting me. I was asked to talk about a graduate program that I run at the University of Toronto. So I'm a faculty member in computer science at U of T. I also did my undergrad and grad at U of T. But I spent most of my career in industry. I did an internship as an undergrad. I always tried to make all of the experiential learning opportunities available. I tried to take advantage of them. So I was asked to come back to U of T to run this program, and I'll run you through a little bit of how it works. So it's a master's level computer science program where you basically swap out the thesis component for an 8-month applied research industry internship. So that's a lot of bits and pieces. It's called the Master of Science in Applied Computing. So what's unique about this program, and it's a really high-touch program, we have to work very carefully with our industry partners to help them define research projects for the students. It's not like any programming job fits. It's got to be answering a difficult research question and something that will, is really important to the company as well. So we work with them to refine the projects if they need that type of assistance. But really, it's the industry partners that drive the project. It's not a terminal degree like a lot of the professional, quote-unquote, professional masters are considered to be terminal degrees, meaning that they're not intended to prepare students necessarily to go on to PhD, but to have a career in industry. This program kind of straddles that line where students, because of the research-oriented nature of the projects, they can go on to PhD. Many of them have already chosen to target industry, so about 90% go to industry, typically remaining at where they did their internship, and the remaining 10% go on to PhD. Fairly small program. It's only been around for about 8 years. I've been running it for the last 4 years. I can't take credit for all the brilliance that went into creating the program. It was actually created by a group of people at computer science, and the initial director was Dr. Eugene Fume, who's now the Dean of Engineering at Simon Fraser. So thanks to Eugene for creating such a cool program for me to run. We have about a few hundred industry partners, and we reach out to them every year. So it's a 16-month program, 8 months of coursework and 8 months of industry internship. The students get to choose courses from the normal graduate offerings from computer science, engineering, math, statistics. Basically all the normal grad courses our research masters and PhDs take. They do have 2 additional courses, one in communications, because they're really ambassadors to the program in the department in industry when they go out. So we need to ensure they have a certain level of communication skills. They're often presenting research results to members of their organization who might not necessarily be technical. So it's very important they have that. And then when they're on their internship, they also take a night course every other week where they learn a bit about industry. It's called technical entrepreneurship. It's not necessarily dedicated solely to entrepreneurship. It's also, I call it Company 101. Not all of them have worked in industry before. So they need to kind of know the lingo, and some of them are more on the entrepreneurial side, and they will go to smaller startups. Others go to larger companies like Google or Amazon. We have about a 60-40 split, international versus domestic. University of Toronto's computer science department is pretty highly ranked in the world, so we get a lot of applications. This past year we had 1,000 applicants for 60 spots in the program, so it's intensely competitive. Similar to the apprentice programs, our students tend to be a little bit older and have some industry experience. The average is about 4 years industry experience, so our students are about 26 years old when they enter the program on average, but the range is huge from about 22 to mid-40s, people looking to reskill or to change fields. We also recently launched a concentration in data science in collaboration with the statistics department at the University of Toronto. So these students do 2 courses in computer science, 2 in stats, and then of course the special courses dedicated just to this program. So their course load is actually heavier than that of the research stream students. There's no publication requirement, but they're encouraged to publish, and we've had some really good success stories on that. There's lots more I could say. I'm normally used to giving this pitch to companies to getting them on board, so this is a very different audience for me. I'm not quite sure what points to stress. And I was trying to think of a student success story, because there's basically, I could pick a student at random and it would be a good story, but I thought of a good one while my colleagues were speaking. So this one student came from Jordan. She did her undergrad in Jordan. She was hired at a small startup. She wanted to do the startup thing, so we found her a really good position at a startup called Addictive Mobility. They're in Toronto. There's no requirement that the internships have to be in Toronto. We have one at Rakuten in Japan, for example, so they can really be anywhere. But she did her internship at Addictive in Toronto. She now runs their data science team, so she's had a number of generations of MSCACs after her. And they were acquired by Palmerex, or the Weather Network, and now she's working with their chief data scientist to build up the Weather Network's data science team, which is really cool. And we also have, the internships are paid. They don't have to be paid. We're more concerned with the research quality of the projects. But they are typically paid, and they're paid fairly well because the companies have been competing over the students. So they're a little bit spoiled. They get a career fair dedicated just to them for projects that we've already pre-vetted. Then the average salary, I don't know if I should talk about average salaries or not. The average salary last year was $61,000 for 8 months. A large portion of that is we have a good, strong partnership with MyTax. So MyTax was instrumental in the early days of allowing companies to take our students with a bit of a discount through the matched funds grant. So that was really, really helpful to get the reputation that we now have. And now the students they're competing over it. I don't really want to stress the salaries because I hate it when the students come and they just want the big high-paying job at the end. But the only other thing I can think to mention is because we have 60% international students, these students want to stay in Canada. And because they've done their master's here, they get the post-graduation work permit immediately upon graduation. They are all picked when it comes up. So the PGWP lasts for about 3 years, and then by then they'll have their PR. So it's a fantastic way to attract some of the really top minds to Canada and then keep them here. So that's one of the things I like. Last thing I'll say is students coming from abroad that don't have the funds to cover the first 8 months, because these are not funded students, their funding comes from the internship. We lost a few students that were world class, and it just drove me nuts that we're losing them over money for 8 months. So I found a company out of Cape Town and London and New York called Prodigy Finance, and they do international graduate student loans, so that's like a bridge loan to cover. They love us because our students make so much money, they're not worried about the loan not being repaid. But again, the research quality of the projects is the point, not so much the stipend. I could go on forever, but I'm going to stop now, I think. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I love hearing the passion that each of you express in the various forms of will. Up next, we have Matt Rempel from Sheridan College.
So, hey gang, thanks for including me and staying for this PD event. For any of us that work in WIL, probably the coolest thing is the vast diversity of work integrated learning experiences that exist. And for those of us that spend time playing with definitions, that excitement can also be frustrating, but we've gotten pretty close with our CEWIL definition. So I've been asked to speak about field placement, and I just want to read the definition real quick, and then I'll share some thoughts on it. But field placements provide students with intensive part-time, short-term, hands-on practical experiences in settings relevant to their subject of study. Field placements may not require supervision of a registered or licensed professional, but could. And the completed work experience hours are not required for professional certifications. So field placements are also WIL that are not encompassed by other forms such as co-op, clinic, practicum, and internship. So it is the catch-all for other WIL, where students are in the workplace or in some cases simulated workplaces. So the variety, even just within this one category, is kind of cool. My understanding of the purpose for this type of education is very similar to what we're familiar with in co-op. This is a student's opportunity to apply their theory in practice. So they're taking their classroom learning, they're going into the field, they're going into the workplace, and they're giving it a try. And in most cases, they're going back to the classroom, which is cool. They're developing or obtaining competencies related to the workplace. And then another neat one is it's also an opportunity just to get workplace literacy. So contrary to what we're familiar with in the co-op model, which is really employment-based, the expectations of students might be a little bit more learner-centric than productive employee-centric in the co-op model. So it's a neat distinction in that space. To give you a flavor of what field placement programs could look like, I'm just going to share a few of them from Sheridan. And at Sheridan College, we've got a program in journalism, and the field placement that takes place in that is a 4-week block, and oftentimes takes place in industry, in journalism companies, but also could be right on campus, in the on-campus radio station or the on-campus TV station. So a short but intensive experience. That could be contrasted by other programs like educational support, which is students learning how to support students in the classroom with exceptionalities or maybe disabilities, or even early childhood education. And the placement or the field experiences in these programs are more long-term. So over the course of years, students could be spending, well, in class, 2 days, maybe Mondays and Wednesdays, in a placement or in a working environment. And over time, they're also connected with their classroom that's happening at the same time. Some of these programs could have 600, 700, up to 900 hours of field placement experience over the course of their program. And some of them might be just a day for a term. So we have an office admin program where students are just spending a little bit of time in a practice setting. So The variety is pretty intense, which is exciting, and the modalities of its delivery. I thought maybe most of us who are familiar with co-op might be interested in this as well. We're used to a competitive, self-directed model in most cases for co-op. So students are building a resume and seeking out job opportunities, maybe applying through job boards, interviewing, and that whole bit. In the space of field placements, it could be anything between you will be placed and told where you're going to be, to a self-directed competitive model where in the classroom you're supported to go out and find your own placement. And neatly, there are also some opportunities where it's completely hybrid. So the students who want to go find their own placement are encouraged to do so, and some of the students that maybe don't or can't will be placed. So the administration of that isn't as systematized as we're familiar with in the co-op space. So I just wanted to highlight that piece. Primarily, these opportunities are unpaid. But they do have similar elements to what we're familiar with in co-op. So oftentimes there's a preparatory course, so a course built right into the student's education where they're getting ready to go in the field. But a neat add-on that we might not have in co-op land is that students are typically enrolled in some sort of a seminar course at the same time as their field placement. And the unique opportunity of that is when the students are out in the field on Tuesday, they're actually going into the class on Wednesday and talking about what they did, not only with their faculty member, but their colleagues and other students. And that's just sort of a really neat place to bring back learning, to think, to be going through a facilitated reflection process, so the learning can be really exciting. So I know that, I've spent the majority of my time with co-op, but the more I experience field placement and work with faculty members that deliver this, those are kind of the two pieces that I'm a little bit envious of, to be frank. So one, this linkage to the classroom, while students are experiencing the field and then coming back and talking to their faculty and colleagues in a facilitated manner, my goodness, that's a neat way to create learning. And the other thing that we're a little bit envious of is that the expectation of the student being potentially a watcher or observer at the beginning, and then growing through their field placement experiences to participating, to doing, to working. In employment context, you don't have that luxury. You sort of show up and there's an expectation for your wage that you're delivering. So there's a softer way to learn through this form of work integrated learning. So to iterate that point, just wanted to share a quote from a student who's in one of our programs, the Early Childhood Education program. And he said, and I quote, "My first placement, it was here that I had the opportunity to learn some of the most important lessons of my career. Every day, I could watch my mentors demonstrate what I had learned about in the class. And then essentially over time, through practice, he found his confidence to do the work and find his career path. Similar to other forms of WIL and to co-op, the ultimate success story is I got a job offer at the end of my program from the place that I did my placement. This is extremely common in field placement models, much like co-op. So that would be my 5-minute synopsis of field placement, and I'd love to explore it more with you if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks. That was an excellent description of the breadth of what field placement can and does look like. Up next, we have Michelle Stuckness from Redeemer University.
Thank you for having me. So I just want to share a little bit about our program. So I'm a faculty member teaching in our Honors Bachelor of Arts in Applied Social Sciences, and it's social work stream, but we are not a BSW program. Oh, there we go. Thanks. And so I'll share a little bit about what we do, and if it's of help, I'm happy to speak a little bit more about it later. So we offer 2 practicum experiences across the students' 4 years with us, so one in each of the students' 3rd and 4th years of study. And after successful completion of some prerequisite courses, often direct practice courses that the student needs to take. And again, generally direct practice courses across different client populations. And then our practica run about 120 hours, roughly, and the settings are various settings in Canada, US, and abroad. So we have practica offerings across those. So first I need to begin by sharing that what we do does straddle a few CEWIL definitions, and so I'll adopt a loose definition of practica in that yes, students are supervised by at least one registered social work supervisor, which is me. And I'm happy to speak further about the supervisory relationship and what our work together entails, so both individually and in group, and that brings up the whole classroom piece. So we do run concurrently a classroom piece while students are in the field, and that does take the form of group supervision as well. If it'd be of interest, I can also share a bit about coursework that's required, so portfolios, presentations, and students in effect manage their own case file, if you want to call it that. So they're putting together a portfolio, but really the portfolio are components that I carry as a case, but the students then get that experience of actually having a case that they carry through, which is reminiscent of what they would do in the field. So they produce, so students produce a practicum requirement around that. And then the student supervisor at their respective host agency, so this is out in the field, can be a licensed social worker or a well-seasoned practitioner, able to bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the student's experience in the field. We offer students what amounts to a preparatory program for those planning further studies in social work. So successful completion of our program fulfills the requirement for students to then apply for admission to a 10-month BSW program. So some do choose to do that option. Some of our students choose to directly apply to a 2-year MSW program or to enter the voluntary sector directly right after graduation. And some do that to basically build their portfolio, so their own experience, and then return to school later on. And that is, if you know anything, or well, you'd know about MSW programs, the Master of Social Work programs. They are very competitive, and so having a lot of experience is a must. So our students can choose, as I mentioned, to complete their practica anywhere in the world. Where a supervising social worker is not available, I work with agencies to develop a practicum offering that would meet our criteria and can support supervisors. So they're on site supervisors through the evaluation process for the student. And I should probably just add there, prior to becoming a faculty member and kind of going more the teaching route, I was a practitioner in the field. And in one of my past directorship type jobs, one of the things I did develop was for our agency a field placement program where we were taking students from a number of different colleges and universities and basically creating what would be a rich experience in our setting. So I feel like that's something that I've been able to bring to our program, just recognizing that MSWs, sometimes smaller organizations can't have them. So how can we still work with those organizations? So a recent experience with one of our students kind of highlights some of what we do. And so I have Rena's permission to share a little bit about her experience. So Rena is in her 3rd year. She has some experience in the voluntary sector, but she was unsure what exactly, and she's still a little unsure exactly what she'd like to do in practice, so where she'd like to head after her experience. So for her 3rd year practicum, we worked together to research and find a practicum that would intersect with some of her interests developed across her studies and her volunteer experiences in working with traumatized populations. So again, it was a very general interest that she had. So interestingly, she connected with a guest speaker in her Peace and Conflict course who works for an international peace work organization. So they are involved in peace work and reconciliation. Rena was excited about the organization, but we were yet unsure whether the organization would fit better as a voluntary experience, so where she could just go and volunteer with them, and we would then continue looking for a practicum option for her, or whether it would qualify as a practicum. So Rena and I had a number of discussions about what constitutes a practicum at our university, and then together we met with the agency leader who is not a social worker, who is a peace worker, but who was very open to working together to craft an experience that would allow Rena to join them. So the end result, Rena did complete her practicum with the agency, and I'll just share, she began by attending and assisting in advocacy events and then prepared for her time abroad. Rena's field supervisor put in a great deal of work, and effort in teaching Rena about the work and history of peace work, challenging any preconceived notions Rena may have held about the work, and basically preparing Rena for her time on the ground. When Rena traveled, and just because the peace work is quite sensitive, so I'll kind of omit countries, but when Rena did travel, she met with community members, leaders, families, individuals, other peace activists who participated in the peace effort. So for example, one role that she had was counting canisters of tear gas used against protesters, for example. So she really was right on the ground. She also met with crisis team workers who were registered clinicians on the ground to learn more about their work. And then as part of her practicum, Rena assisted in the research and development of a system of support for returning peace workers who often return from their experience abroad quite traumatized. So Rena, knowing that I was going to be here today, I asked her if she had any words that she wanted to share. So I just have something, a small blurb that she sort of shared on her, on her experience. Serena writes, regarding my future, I think this experience has really taught me that I'm definitely open to doing on-the-ground trauma or peace work somewhere overseas. It has also really grown my passion for social justice, and I really hope that I find a career that incorporates trauma and advocacy for social justice simultaneously, whether it's international work, on-the-ground domestic work, or one-on-one trauma counseling. If I hadn't had those few weeks abroad and seeing what peace work can be like on the ground, I don't think I would have ever considered this kind of work nearly as much as I am now doing. The practica can help confirm what are or are not your interests. You may think you're interested in working in a particular area and then find it's not what you thought it would be, or not really think much about pursuing a career in a certain area, but after seeing a glimpse in a practicum, then you realize it really is along the lines of what you would like to do. And then specific to social work, she writes, it also really drove home a lot of anti-oppressive values, such as whose voices are missing. This was a situation in which before my internship, I had very different views on the situation in the area based on biases and assumptions, and I wasn't careful about asking whose voices were missing in these narratives that I was hearing. So this has really shown me that no matter how right I assume my view or perspective is, I still need to seek out whose voices are not being shared or heard. It has started me on a journey of learning how to advocate well and while I confront my own privilege. And so just to let you know, Rena, for fourth year practicum, Rena plans to travel abroad again, I believe this time to Uganda. We're working on that. And will most likely be working frontline with a feminist organization in the area of intimate partner violence. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle, and I appreciate you bringing the student voice to the panel today. Last but not least, we have Susan Psyche from the University of Toronto.
Okay, so I'm talking about internships, and I'm also going to start by reading the definition. And please watch the ors, the and or, the typically, the generally in the definition. So offers usually one discipline specific, typically full-time, supervised, structured, paid or unpaid, for academic credit or a practice placement. Internships may occur in the middle of an academic program or after all academic coursework has been completed and prior to graduation. Internships can be of any length, but are typically 12 to 16 months. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to share two different examples that will give you the flavor along those themes. So I'm the Director of Arts and Science Co-op, the Co-op Department at the University of Toronto, Scarborough. Our department consists of 36 co-op programs within Arts and Science. However, our department name is actually a misnomer. Along with Arts and Science Co-op, our department comprises of a Master of Environmental Sciences internship program. We also recently gained 2 integrated learning experience coordinators who support our faculty in developing external partnerships for curricular ILE or WIL initiatives. So I'm going to start by highlighting our Masters of Environmental Sciences internship program. It's a professional graduate degree with 2 academic terms and a mandatory 4-month paid internship. In many ways, it's similar to our co-op programs, and in other ways, it's very different. Relevant, paid, full-time work terms feel the same as co-op. But for these graduate students, they only have 1 work experience within their program, so the stakes are quite high. Many of our students and employers are looking at the internship as a full-time job trial, as there's no academic period left to complete. And as the students have gained all their academic knowledge, employers have high expectation for their internship students, and the work experience are extremely meaningful, impactful, and very relevant to their academic program. And while the program matches very well to the CEWIL definition, or model, the placement's much shorter than the typical 12 to 16 months length. One of the challenges with the design of this program is that internship work is for academic credit. And without successful completion, students do not graduate from their master's program. And another element to the delivery structure that I'll mention is that it's a centralized, decentralized model, or what we call embedded service delivery model. So what that means is our internship coordinators sit physically with the faculty and support all internship components of that one academic program, while reporting to a manager within our co-op department. While this model is difficult to scale, it works really well for this program, which is about 75 to 100 students a year. And it allows our internship coordinators to develop a really comprehensive understanding and relationship with all of our stakeholders in the program. So now I'm going to highlight a very different perspective. So one of our original co-op programs at UTSC was arts management. However, a number of years ago, before I joined the team, the program divorced our department in the co-op model. It's a good thing. The co-op model did not appropriately serve the needs of our arts management students and the arts industry. And by trying to keep the program contained within the co-op model and the requirements, full-time, 4 months, paid work terms, we were setting up the program and our students to fail. The program now supports the students in a flexible internship model and is embedded within the academic department. During the placement, students complete an online course run by a faculty member. The experience may be full-time or part-time. They can be paid or unpaid. The total number of hours required is 300 as a minimum, but the experience length varies, as does the number of hours per week. So it may or may not line up to the academic term. The fluctuation of experience is driven fully by the industry, the arts industry. Students may have a position, for example, with an arts festival that's full-time during the festival, but part-time before and after. They may work at a theater company with their hours increasing when performances are running, or they may have an unpaid full-time position for 6 months with an art gallery or a museum. This program demonstrates the need and that the needs and the trends of the industry must be well understood and recognized when considering the appropriate WIL model for an academic program. And for me, this story really highlights the need to value and appreciate all the different forms of WIL, and it's really not a one-size-fits-all, even when you're thinking about one actual mode, for example, of internship. A student success story that I'd like to share with you, and there's a picture up above, is about a student who had an 8-month paid placement with Real Asian International Film Festival. The placement started part-time in August, ramped up in hours throughout the fall until the festival in early November. The festival was an intense week of long hours way into the night. Then her hours dropped back to part-time to facilitate wrap-up, documentation, and post-mortem reporting right until March. She did her work was marketing and communication, but during the festival it was all hands on deck to run screenings and to run the event. It was really a fantastic placement for the student and the community partner, and really highlights the need for flexibility in our placements to succeed. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much. We are now going to move on to question and answer period. We are seeing that there's a lot of excellent questions coming in. So the first question that I'm going to pose to the panel is, with all these types of work integrated learning, and the goal being to get more work integrated learning experience for more students, what is the biggest hurdle that you see us facing in moving forward in promoting WIL for all? Go ahead, Matt.
So great question, and a timely one. In the context of 100% WIL for all post-secondary students, what are we doing? We're essentially increasing the supply of students to an ecosystem. And the question then, or it's one of the questions that I ask myself and maybe even worry about a wee bit is the demand changing in industry? Are we appropriately stimulating employers, community partners, and hosts in a way that they're understanding the value of including more students in their systems? Part of the work we do at a systems level is to be an advocate for that type of conversation to governments, to industry associations, to post-secondary institutions, to figure out how we can best articulate the win-win that happens to our economy, to our students, to our future labor force, to our existing employers today. And the stronger we can be at articulating that value proposition, the better we'll all be as a result of it. So that's one way to tackle it at the systems level, and I'd be curious to see what some of my colleagues might have to say about that.
Would anyone else like to jump in?
Yeah, so for me, it's finding the top quality research projects for the students, and the fact that they have to be research oriented. There's per employee, I think a lot of the tech companies in the US do a lot more research down in the valley than we do up here. So kind of stimulating that and encouraging it, and always pushing to have more research done at institutions in Canada is one of my issues. Now, again, they don't all have to do their internships in Canada. It's nice when they do, and like I said, a lot of the internationals in particular are targeting to stay here. So we're way oversubscribed in terms of internships available, but because we're pushing the research element of it, getting the MyTax support helps. The fact that these students' work almost by default qualifies for SR and ED tax credits is certainly helpful, but constantly pushing that research bar locally in Canada is my challenge. I don't know if that's unique to this program, though.
So I'll just share a little more narrow perspective on the entrepreneurship side. I think if we were to promote more, I'll go by the definition again, entrepreneurial mindset over entrepreneurship, and the students have to create a startup. It's a different argument. I think on the entrepreneurship side, what we'd like to promote more is to encourage students to do more active experimentation. So if they're pretty specifically self-identified, they want to be in a program, and they want a lot of check boxes through their 3-5 years through the program, it's kind of sometimes counterintuitive to the entrepreneurship model where they have to try and they have to fail. Well, we call it learning by iteration, but they will fall down. And so I think on the entrepreneurship side, we're trying to find that balance between what a program is to support them to be successful, but also give them room to embrace the uncertainty, try stuff, and it's okay to fail. But I have to be careful using that word in this conversation.
That leads very nicely into our next question. And recognizing the diverse forms of will and how they may all have differing purposes, how do we balance stakeholders' perspectives? So that could be students, it could be industry or community, it could be parents at recruitment events. But how do we communicate the diverse perspectives and purposes that the different forums have with the individuals that we're communicating those with?
I think one of the things that's really critical is everyone actually starts talking to each other. With all the different forms and the focus, we tend to worry about what our specific mandate is within our specific program or specific faculty. And one of the challenges is if within our institution we're not working with each other within the different modes of experiential learning, we're not connecting, we're not creating the voice, and we are often fighting for the same resources and only hearing one perspective. I think it's actually working amongst ourselves and bringing all of our stakeholders together and making space for the voices as a group and as a larger environment ecosystem, and making sure there is that voice. And it's not always the same players at the table.
Something that came to mind, I do a lot of work actually with parents and with students, and I think that it's important for us not to present work integrated learning as competing methods of work integrated learning. I think oftentimes we might think, well, you know, students and parents like to ask, you know, what's the highest amount of money I'll make, or what's the best option for work integrated learning that my son or daughter might have, and students are asking that question themselves, when really I think we also need to be letting people know that they all have immense value in all of their forms, and not to see them or perceive them as competing with each other, but you know, as was said, an ecosystem or a symphony even of options that many students will pass through multiple of these options over their career, and they don't need to compete with each other. They can be a family of options.
I'd like to add that with regard to the employer realm, this push towards 100% will, we need to be thoughtful about employer fatigue, because we come to them a lot, asking a lot of them, whether it be a paid employment, whether it's 4 months, whether it's a volunteer experience for 4 weeks, or whether it's this or it's that. It can be exhausting for them, and they try to get their heads around everything that they need to do, and we're pushing our product on them. So we need to think about their needs in community, yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing. I totally agree that communication is important between the different stakeholders at the university. So one of the difficult things for me coming back to U of T in this role, because prior to that I was a student and I taught a few courses, but we do have, like at the St. George campus, we have this PEY program, which is the juggernaut for U of T's internship placements for engineers, predominantly engineers. But when I get opportunities sent to my program, I never throw anything away. If it's not perfect for an MSCAC, it might be great for a PEY, or maybe the problem's too researchy and it should go to a research lab. And now maybe we should chat about sharing opportunities across Scarborough and downtown. So yeah, that's communication is definitely key, and it's tough in these big organizations.
I will definitely say at U of T, we often come to conferences or meetings where we're actually meeting each other for the first time. But the piece I do want to highlight also is the brand. We often look at the different forms of WIL, and there's often stigma or assumptions, or that one is better than the other, or that students have preferences, or that our partners have preferences. And I think we really need to invest as a community in all the different forms and building them up, and really helping all of our stakeholders understand that each model has amazing things to offer, and each student, each experience, we have to fit the right thing to the right thing. So we have to get the program, the industry, the student, and pick the right one and design it based on what all those stakeholders and what the industry needs, versus picking one that we're familiar with, or we know the name, or we think students will like, and designing it that way. And really, I think it's important for us as practitioners and champions of what we do to really make sure we're valuing all of them all the time and building them up.
Okay, so speaking to valuing diverse forms of work integrated learning, everything that we've talked about today so far has been focused on curricular work integrated learning. Where is the place for co-curricular WIL? And is there one?
I'll speak to that a little bit. At the University of Victoria, we also, in our co-op and career program, we are also running what we sort of laughingly call the longest pilot in history of running a co-curricular record program. And having started with the co-curricular, our pilot nearly 4 or 5, 6 years ago now, it's one thing I've learned is that it's not one thing for all students. So those students who thrive in co-op, and that's great. The students that may gain experience in a field placement, that's terrific. The students who do practicum, that's wonderful. But then there's the other students that you don't come across, who don't put themselves out there, who don't maybe think about trying to make an activity or experience for themselves. But if something like a co-curricular is out there, and you can help bring them to having a very modified experience, then you can bring them into the curricular realm from the co-curricular realm.
Would any others like to speak to this?
Myself, I would love to see 5 years from now, or even sooner, a CEWIL having another expanded mandate and seeing how we actually bring them in, because I think the work they do is extremely valuable. I think it's important we recognize who does what within an institution and where those lines are, but they should be partners. They should be, we should have less of a wall between the student services side and the academic side, and actually we're often working to the same goals, and it would be, I think, much better if we're actually working more thoughtfully with them as partners. And I know CEWIL, this was a big step to expand the first mandate, but their voice is an important one, and the work they do is critical.
It's a neat question, and I say that because in my line of work I get to be involved in the whole spectrum of extracurricular, co-curricular to curricular, both in experiential and a wee bit work integrated learning. One of the neat things about the curricular WIL space is that we have some influence on the students' learning. So yes, in some cases they're going to be in industry and they're going to experience the workplace, unfiltered and supervised separately from us. But there's a window where they come back and we're able to guide some reflection, and we're able to help the student make associations between what they're learning in the class and how this has benefited them and how this attributes to their learning as a person or as a professional. Where it gets a wee bit muddier in the co-curricular, extracurricular space is whether or not we have that ability to influence the learning from that perspective. And I say that as a huge champion of volunteerism and co-curricular and extracurricular activities, because there's an immense amount of learning that happens there. As academic institutions, if we're looking at promoting this and building this up, there are neat mechanisms for us to be involved, even if it's out of the classroom. Co-curricular records are one way to have faculty supervisors or a champion of an experience be involved and maybe facilitate some of that learning. But also creating and maybe just recognizing or having students log and appreciate all the things they do out of the classroom, and then help them maybe through career centers or whoever on campus does that type of work to translate those experiences into learning and into an understanding of how they've grown as an individual. Might be some neat ways to recognize and support the will that might not happen in the classroom deliberately. So just some thoughts on that.
Thanks, and thanks for the definition. I was hearing co-curricular, and I wanted to be sure I was understanding it correctly. So at Redeemer, we are quite small. So I can speak to sort of that in the classroom when we are talking about different, if it's political, if it's injustices in the world, how our students can kind of take that, fuel it, and then enter into on campus where they start student groups, where they start advocacy efforts, and where sometimes that incubator is the classroom. So it kind of starts with those kind of conversations and then flows out. Now again, I know that because we're small, that's something in our, I think that kind of works in our DNA, where students can ask faculty members, for example, to be a part of initiatives that they have on campus or off campus. I mean, last week was the A21 walk. Our students were walking. We were all trying to get there. The faculty were trying to get there and walk with our students because this was something they were putting together. Our students started a SOAPS group, Students of Applied Social Sciences, and then they run their own events and then have us come in as different members of that experience. So I guess I can speak to that. And then what I'd also say, Bruce and I are at the same institution. And so Bruce runs our Center for Experiential Learning and Careers. And so we often refer and defer to each other. So my students, if they want to get an MSW, there is no way with practicum. Let me keep the right term. So to practica, there is no way they can apply to an MSW program and for their application to really be looked at seriously. So I need Bruce, and I need my students to know Bruce and to know the center and to know that there are volunteer experiences, volunteer opportunities that he has established, their team has established, that they really need to look at and think about and kind of get familiar with the I call it in Hamilton Red Book. So so our Hamilton Red Book of all the social service agencies, I want our students to be well versed in that. So it's not, I just feel like for our students to be competitive, we are small. For our students to be competitive, they have to be. It has to be co-curricular, curricular, it has to be everything together.
If I can add to that one myself, I don't think that this is a black and white question. I think the answer I've been asked numerous times is work, study, work integrated learning. And my answer is constantly, well, it depends. So we know the tenets of what is work integrated learning, and we have a bit of an understanding of how to facilitate it to enhance quality work integrated learning experiences. So I would pose the question back and say, well, how is it structured? What are you doing? And with that question, that yes, it is deliberately tied into the academic curriculum of the students. So does that program tie it in some way to the academic curriculum? And it depends on the individual program. And so I think it's a great question that we are asking and continue asking. And one of the great things of asking these questions is not necessarily in the answers themselves, but in the opportunity it provides us to rethink our current offerings to hopefully transform more experiences into work integrated learning. So the next question we have is, with trying to find work integrated learning experiences for thousands of students, I think that's even understatement, how do you ensure quality experiences that meet learning objectives?
So I'll just share some of the information that we get from the entrepreneurship side. So because it's more learning by doing than, say, rubrics and being tested on it, we actually have a lot of reflection milestone pieces where the students actually will share their cycles of learning and or failures. So by being reflective, I think we're kind of getting them to be more self-aware of what they can accomplish. Another piece to share is we actually we encourage a lot of our students on the entrepreneurship side to find mentors and advisors. There's not one lecturer that can give them the perfect blueprint of how to create a company or develop these things. And so an advantage, I think, speaking to the engineering faculty at Waterloo, is there's a very engaged engineering alumni group, and many of them paid forward. They like to support the students in this kind of model. So there's a little bit of like reflection pieces that we actually encourage them to do and deconstruct, because they have to learn by doing. And also they share those learnings as reflections with advisors, which is a big piece as well.
I just want to add an interesting piece from an apprenticeship perspective to this question, because the curriculum throughout the entire duration of apprenticeship is prescribed, I guess. But the same question that we would ask in apprenticeship in a different kind of way might be, how do we know that our students, although they're going through this kind of prescribed learning, are learning the real soft skills or harder skills that they need to succeed after, during, at every point in their apprenticeship and beyond, to be able to offer this again when they become a certified junior person and suddenly have an apprentice. How is it that they're going to push that forward? So although I don't quite have an answer to the actual question, just an interesting perspective is that the question itself doesn't actually apply to every method of work integrated learning, right? It gets us thinking again, you know, with apprenticeship, the Ontario College of Trades right now, or what puts forward our training standards, and literally that certified journey person marks off every hour spent and makes sure that each piece of that is accomplished on the job. And then the curriculum in class is also very prescribed, and it's a combination of technical, in-shop, and also theoretical as well, which that whole component is also prescribed. So with work integrated learning as it relates to apprentices, we're pushing those boundaries of what are those extra skills that we need to make sure they have beyond just what we've prescribed. So just an interesting perspective to that question.
If I could just offer some 2 cents. I mean, we're talking about how do we maintain volumes and manage volume, and some institutions are doing 7,000 to 10,000 students a year, while not compromising quality and not maybe compromising the unique independence of every single program, because they're all special in their industry and special in their program design, and you don't want to get to a point where, as an institution, you're systematizing everything so that it becomes a wee bit vanilla. So there's a balance to be had in that space, and some of the things that I've seen that have worked are to consider, you know, broader topics like, say, employer and community partner relationships. Matt, I think you were saying, you know, if I get a call from industry and it doesn't fit the bill for my class, I don't just kick it away. I make sure somebody else gets to hear about it. That may or may not be happening in every single post-secondary institution in Canada, and I bet it's not. I know at Sheridan we're working real hard at it, and we're still maybe not. But there are ways to support those relationships and build some sort of business systems around capturing, you know, employers' names and contacts, having referral systems that work, but aren't so administratively burdensome that they get tossed aside. So when we focus on some of the things we can do as an institution to manage the volume, but to make sure that the folks that are involved in the system or with their programs aren't losing their autonomy to do what they do so well and so special at the program level. And I suspect that that's a challenge many of the bigger institutions are trying to figure out, that balance between autonomy and sort of centralization, and maybe for lack of a better word. But there is something in the middle that allows us to leverage the economies of scale on a broad interaction with industry and our students, but savors and maintains the things that make our program special and the quality that happens at the program and faculty level. So finding that mix will probably be a challenge for a bunch of us to be involved in the future.
Okay, this leads in nicely to the next question about reflection. So what does reflection look like across the various forms of will, and how is it facilitated and assessed?
So I assume you mean reflection on their experience with the industry, placement, whatever form it takes. So I love that question because I have a great answer that I didn't actually anticipate. It was kind of serendipitous. We thought initially that these students would be very focused on entrepreneurship. That's the type of students we expected to apply to the program. So we had an interesting partnership. We were just talking about a good friend of mine runs the Waterloo Accelerator Center. His name's Paul Salvini. He used to teach a course in my program. So we thought it would be great for the students to go and do pitches at the Accelerator Center in Waterloo as if it was like a company they were going to start. It worked well, but we were surprised to find that only about 15 to 20% of our students were really entrepreneurial in their thinking. A lot of them just wanted a really good research position in industry or potentially to defer the decision of whether or not to continue to PhD. So we retooled the course and we had them present their industry. So they're working on a very specific, fairly narrow research project. We had them to do business model canvas presentations on the company that they're doing their internship at. So they would have to go around and interact with other people at the company and say, you know, how would you market this thing that I'm in, you know, if this works and I build it into this product, how do we market it? How do we sell it? What's the financial model? Who are our stakeholders, customers, key partners? And I started getting calls from our industry partners saying, where are you getting these students? Like, these students are asking me questions, and I didn't tell them it's for an assignment, but the industry partners were really impressed with the fact that the students were going beyond the scope of just their day-to-day, you know, in their editors writing their Python code. They're actually saying, how is this going to affect our key stakeholders for our business? So we wanted them to get the perspective of how their company actually works, but it turned out that that kind of was a step in the direction of taking on more of a leadership role with that deeper understanding. So it wasn't quite preconceived to go that deep, but it had really dramatic impacts on their career at the company kind of 1 year, 2 year, 3 years out after the internship, because many of them stayed at their company. So that was a huge success. So yeah, the business model canvas for their internship was what we did, and it worked out amazingly well. I can't take credit for it either, unfortunately. It was the instructor of the course that Paul Salvini at the Accelerator Center used to teach.
So for our co-op programs, for the Enterprise Co-op and the BETS First Year Engineering program, at the end of the term, the students have to do an interim presentation. And part of the reflection piece is summarize the top 5 feed-forward recommendations you would, with 2 filters, recommend to students who are in the next program, the year term after them, and also for a student who is you, like your faculty, your department. And so some students give you kind of the vanilla general answers, but the students all know it's in an open presentation, so they're kind of social proofing on not being competitive, but they try to come up with really good takeaways on what they would feed forward. And we implemented this about 3 years ago, and it turned out that it was a turning point. A lot of students became much more self-aware of what they actually had celebrated to learn over the 4 months, and then what they would say, this didn't work, if I fed this forward, you should do this or not do this. So the reflection piece was in 2 parts, not just what they accomplished, but what they would give as kind of, if they were the mentor now, to give advice to the next group.
Great. Well, when you mentioned reflection for, I guess in the social service sector, that's kind of key in our work. So I just thought, again, cross-field, cross-discipline, if any of this sparks ideas. One thing our students do keep is a reflective journal of their daily experience, and that's submitted. And again, through that, every year I read these wonderful journals that basically get into how the tensions, the skills that they tried out that didn't work, did work, how they felt about it, if they feel this is fitting. So again, journals tend to get quite personal. Our students also analyze an interaction with one of the people that they work with, so a client, so someone that they work with, and those are about 6 to, anyways, they could go on, a massive analysis of an interaction. We also have a seminar as well. It's kind of neat that cross, different approaches. So students present on a seminar that gets into attention that they experienced in the field. So basically where they were involved in an interaction or any interaction that they may have had in the field where they felt that, for instance, our code of ethics as social workers, so where the code of ethics, they felt that tension, and then they present on that. And then while they're in, I mentioned supervising, right? So while they're in setting, they also have coursework with me, and that coursework includes where we do group supervision together, where they're bringing components of what they're seeing in the field, so experiences they're seeing in the field, and together we're processing those experiences. So the reflective piece isn't necessarily just me giving feedback, it's hearing from their peers on what exactly is happening. And often, one thing I love is when one student shares and another student is kind of going, actually I had that same thing, you know, someone asked for my cell phone number, I didn't know quite what to do, or whatever that is, right? It was a boundary issue, or maybe just an uncomfortable situation, I ran it by my supervisor, all of those pieces, and they can kind of share and compare experiences. So that's a couple, and then the final evaluation at the end with their supervisor. That is very much a conversation about competencies.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I think that we could keep this conversation going all afternoon. I apologize to those of you that asked questions that we were not able to get to, but I encourage you to approach the individual panelists after this session here and hopefully try to get some responses to the questions you posed. With that, I want to thank each of the panelists for your contributions to today's professional development event. And I believe that this is going to be the first of many more conversations to come on where there's will, there's more ways. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the CEWIL president, Christine Dawson, for some closing words.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks very much to the panel and to Ashley and to Bruce for coordinating this PD session. And I just wanted to also just give a little bit of information. So CEWIL is, there was a question that quite a few were asking around definitions, BHER's definitions, CEWIL's definitions. And I wanted you to know that this is actually something that we're actively working on in terms of having conversation with BHER around the ability to try to align those definitions. And I think that if there's one thing that would maybe stand out in terms of what is the sticking point, was the piece that's most different between the definitions is that for CEWIL, our definitions of work integrated learning at the core have our three partners: the academic institutions, the employers or community partners, and the students. And that its will, by its definition, is curricular in nature. The definition that we've put forward is work integrated learning, not experiential learning. And so that's where some of the examples of work integrated learning that BHER has provided may be things that we might categorize as experiential learning if they're not embedded into academic curriculum. So I wanted to just give you that to take away with you, because I know this is a topic of lots of discussion right now. So I wanted to say that. Thank you. And I know, Bruce, I think you've got the final wrap up.
What will I say except thank you to my committee, who are pretty amazing when it comes to sponsoring ideas. This one came out of a lot of discussion that the board had that fed the committee, particularly during our session in Montreal at Concordia. So for those sparkling minds, I'm eternally grateful. I'm also eternally grateful to our moderator, Ashley, thank you. That was stellar. To our panelists who, wow, really shone some amazing lights on things that I had not thought of, and I thank you very deeply for your contributions that way, the preparation and all that went into it. Jenny, as always, for making it somehow sparkle again. We have some gifts to show appreciation for our panelists, so we'll hand those out now. But I think that is the end of the PD event. Thank you, everybody out there and here.